Welcome into the At the Yard podcast, episode 129. I'm your host, Lukach. Once again, happy to be joined by Vinnie Alfino, ℙ𝕉𝕚𝕕𝕕, and Stephen Hardesty. And gentlemen, we are back this time to discuss the class of 2027 player rankings. Before we jump in, had an opportunity to see a lot of these guys over the spring and over the summer and here in the early parts of the fall. And this class in my book is really starting to look like a top to bottom, incredibly deep class.
Yeah, very much agree. I really liked the 26 group 2 years ago. And now as we've gone 2 years, I feel like some of this 27 group is going to vastly pass up some of the better players in that 26 group and their long-term potential.
Yeah, Sam Hardy. I think this class has the potential to be, a separator with the other classes. It's just like the summer. I think the summer was a big point for these guys of making themselves a huge separation between players. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah, definitely a big separation at the top, but I think there's just a lot of talent at the bottom too. There's a lot of good players. I think in another class could be a lot higher. I think it's just a deep class in California overall.
Yeah, there's a lot of depth. And Hank, I mean, just looking at our rankings, NorCal is really loaded in this 2027 class, man. I mean, you're pretty spoiled up there. I mean, at the top, it's pretty SoCal centric, but I mean, just even looking at our top 10, we got, two guys from NorCal in the top 10, but once you start getting past the top 10, I mean, NorCal is incredibly well represented.
I think that just goes to show how talented our whole state is in general and how big it is, honestly, because there's probably guys that, we still don't really know much about that we still got to get out there and see. But no, I agree. Like, I am kind of spoiled up here. Like, I can go 2 hours in every direction and, you can have an arm that's 95 this way, a guy going to OSU down there. And I do get a little spoiled up here.
Yeah, it's a deep class, and let's jump into it. We saw some movement in the top 10 overall with 4 new entrants. Elijah Mason checks in at number 5. Rudy Ira Rootman checks in at number 7. Jay Beckett Berg at number 8, and Jack Leeper at number 10 are the 4 new entrants into the class. We see some movement. As we mentioned, Davis Wilson makes a jump up to number 3. Sean Perro to number 4. Carter Hadnot at 6. Parker Leoff moves to number 9 in the class. And then at the top, you got the same number 1, same number 2, and Jared Grinliger and Dylan Seward. So, I mean, you just look at that top 10, man, and you're looking at, draft pick after draft pick after draft pick in that top 10.
Yeah, very much agree. I think we talked about this with the 26 class. Hank said it, where it's a lot of college bodies and guys that are going to go off and play college before they go pro. This group looks like there's a chunk of those guys that they're going to have really big colleges next to their name as commitments, but they may never put that uniform on. They are going to go straight into a professional setting, a lot of these kids.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very well-rounded class. Like, how some classes are very shortstop heavy or pitcher heavy, but this is, I think it's very spread out in terms of athletes in the outfield, behind the dish, pitchers. So, yeah, I'm a huge fan of the 27 class.
Yeah, no question. I think Hank said it best. I'm looking, we have middle infielders, right-handed pitchers, Grinlinger at the top, left-handed pitcher. It's just very wide and spread out amongst the depth we have at the top 10. And you're going to see that kind of at the whole class too. There's just a lot of range of talent that can play all over the field.
Yeah, and a few outfielders in there too with Rudy and Leeper, and then, Elijah Mason, who may end up in the outfield with his athleticism in center field. It's just the top 10 in my book is really, really good. And kind of like we talked about in the last podcast, there's some shuffling, and it's not because a guy got worse or a guy stayed the same. It's just the last 3 months or so that we've had since we last updated our rankings. some of these other guys just made that good of a jump. I mean, I look at Carter Hadnot.
Yeah.
You touched on it at the top. Some of these guys, if they're in a different class, are probably a lot higher. Carter Hadnot's an elite talent, right? And he goes from 5 to 6, which isn't overly significant, right? I mean, we still think really highly of him, but it's just guys like, Mason and Seward kind of continued to make those jumps in front of him. Yeah. But Hadnot's a guy who's going to be a power 4 level commit, and these guys, it's so early in their process. I think that still so much time left for them to, make that kind of final statement. And I think Hadnot's one of those guys, when it's all said and done, is going to be one of those top 3, 4, 5 guys in this class.
Yeah, very much agree. I think one of the big things was area codes, with Seward not being able to play there due to a freak kind of just mishap injury, like nothing major, but it knocked him out for that whole week. And now Carter, playing for Breakthrough, gets to be the focal point shortstop in our top 10 that's playing there. And the kid absolutely, not to say he's not a great player, but he stepped it up a level. And he was like, I saw him both at under and upper, and he was electric both times, defensively, at the plate, athletically. Like, he said, okay, it's my stage. I'm going to shine bright.
I think Carter did a good job of maturing this summer, along with, I think, a lot of these athletes too. It's kind of that middle ground. You're like, hey, is this kid going to peak? Is he going to figure it out? And I think a lot of these kids figured the maturity out part. And so I think you'll see that jump. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see this the list will mix up again in 3-4 months. And then another time after that. So just a lot of talent overall.
Yeah. So then we have a top 10 uncommitted list, and you can find this article on prepbaseballreport.com/California. We got notes on about, is it 55?
This one's I think this was 60 plus on this group. I went pretty deep on this one because I really like this class.
Yeah, 60 plus guys. So make sure you head over to the website, prepbaseballreport.com. You can read the article, see the full ranking, see our top 10 uncommitted. A guy that we're really familiar with at number 11, who's the top uncommitted guy outside of the top 10, Mariano Gonzalez, the lefty out of Vanden. At number 12, Ethan Gustus, the righty out of Roseville. At number 13, the lefty out of Corona, Mason Sims. You're starting to see a trend here with the arms in this class. Cole Munyon at number 15, the shortstop out of Newbury Park. 16, Jojo Flores out of Corona, the shortstop, right-handed pitcher. 17, Jose Partida, the left-handed pitcher, first baseman out of Cathedral Catholic. Number 18, Wyatt McElree, the righty out of Redwood. We'll get into him a little bit more later. 19, Gavin Williams, the catcher, right-handed pitcher out of Garces Memorial. Number 20, the righty AJ Lasota out of Notre Dame. And then number 21, the middle infielder Royal McKinney out of Franklin. So what I like about this group, again, we talked about it at the top, like you got 5 dudes out of those 10, Hank, that are from NorCal or that Central Valley area.
Yeah.
Again, really getting into the depth of talent in the state in this class.
Yeah, I think, we got a good wide of state coverage, just from NorCal to the Valley down to SoCal. Just gives us kind of a broader look of how much talent there really is out here. And, but yeah, like you said, 5 NorCal guys. I mean, the first one on there, we've talked about him before, is Mariano. Just can't teach the arm action there. But I don't think he's going to stay uncommitted for long. He's one of those guys where it's not the talent that's an issue. I think he's actually going to all of his visits this fall. A lot of schools really love the kid, but it's just a matter of where he wants to go. But I mean, kind of to piggyback off him and Gustus, they're the 2 27 arms up here that are, the premier level, I'd want to say. Both mid to upper 90s type guys, and one's righty, one's lefty. So it's kind of like pick your poison with one of those two. So I'm going to monitor him a lot this year. Gustus is actually down the street from me, so it's really close to see him. And then Mariano, it's just a matter of where he's going to end up at high school this year. So, yeah, those two arms I'm really looking forward to for the next 2 years actually to see.
Yeah, Mariano, who we had on Team NorCal at the Future Games this summer, really opened a lot of eyes out there. And, I want to get to something you touched on about taking all his visits. That's something we encourage those guys to do, before we kind of broke as a team there after the last game, is like we told them, hey, take all of your visits, right? I mean, make sure that you're going to the right place for you. But more importantly, I mean, this is the one time in your life where, the cards are in your hands, right? I mean, because once you commit, I mean, you're a player and you have to do what you're being told to do versus right now as a recruit. I mean, they're trying to kind of wine and dine you, so to speak, and woo you a little bit with what they're able to do. So, I'm fired up with, we've had a few guys commit from those teams and a lot of them took multiple visits before committing.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. And one of the big ones is like you may go to a school on the first week and absolutely love everything you see there, but you have no idea. Like maybe you went to a school in the Big 12 in your first visit, and then you've got an SEC and an ACC school lined up after that. Like go get the experience and give yourself all the information to make the best decision for yourself. Like, yeah, you might get your socks blown off at one place and be ready to commit, but you just don't know with another school. Like you could walk in and go, hey, this is even better than last weekend.
Right.
Yeah, you really don't know until you got to like find out. And I think that's what a lot of these kids like we're preaching is, hey, take your time. There's no rush to commit to a school unless it's like your absolute dream school. I get that. But, especially with the whole unlimited visits thing now is you could really kind of take your time and, really push your options. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, another big part of the article was, the rankings risers. Within this, we'll include some newcomers to the rankings. And Vinny, we'll start with you. A shortstop we had an opportunity to see at the California State Games. Made a ridiculous double play turn or started the front end of it.
Right.
Up the middle there playing second base, but he's a shortstop over at Mater Dei, and Sebastian Navarro.
Yeah, I love Sebastian Navarro, kind of everything that he did at State Games, really just had him become just one of my favorite guys that I watched over those 3 days. First team all Trinity League player, we know how deep that league is and how impressive it is to be a first team league player there, especially as a sophomore. And then he follows that up with a huge State Games. Had, I believe, 3 hits on the week over the 2 days, including 2 doubles. Can play multiple positions. Can put him at second base. Can put him at shortstop. Can play third. And I think what goes, under the radar is just, the size. He's only right now 5'6", 162, but I think he plays bigger than his body. He plays the game hard. He plays it the right way. Ran a 6.54 60 during our workout. And, he's just a gamer. There's some guys that kind of just have a mentality to them when they, put on a jersey and, he's a guy that gets dirty, gets after it. And, he's a guy I think has a bright future ahead of him. I think he definitely is a Division I talent that can, find a home somewhere, maybe on the West Coast. But, for him, there's a lot to like there. And I think it's really starts with just the mentality that Sebastian has, and it carries on to the field when you put him anywhere, play three positions, second, short, third, can hit, just does everything the right way. And that's why, I definitely attracted to him well over those 3 days.
Yeah, the mentality is definitely, I think, the separator for him. Plays almost like he's got a chip on his shoulder. And I think that, has a lot to do with probably being undervalued given his size so much. And then, Hank, I know that the next guy the guy that you wanted to chat about here, Gavin McMillan, is a guy you're pretty fond of. Makes a small jump up the rankings from 30 to 24, but a noticeable jump up those rankings nonetheless.
Yeah, the big man. I think he's still growing, to be honest. He's almost like 7 foot. But no, I think his knock was, he's so tall. Why isn't he throwing 95? Like, that's been the huge question. And I think this summer the velo's finally starting to get there. And I think he said he was in the low 90s at area code, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, and you also got to think, too, the kid's still only 16, 17 years old, and he hasn't played his junior year yet. So I remember kids when we were juniors in high school, they were, thinking 80's great still. So, I mean, for him to like know how to pitch, I think that's the biggest thing a lot of these pitchers don't really like take pride of is the pitchability, like knowing the strike zone, how to get hitters out, and not just relying on straight velo. You know what I mean? So I think McMillan's one of those guys where he knows he doesn't throw, 95 yet, but it's in the tank and he's just waiting on, he's going to trust it, but, let's figure out how to pitch first.
Yeah, absolutely. And a guy that's figuring out how to pitch since we first saw him at the tryout, Hardy, for the future games, and then out at the future games, and then early here in the fall, Andrew Weber goes from unranked to number 60. And his performance out at the future games really stood out to me because he didn't necessarily have his stuff early, but then, man, he bared down and absolutely shoved.
Yeah, that's a great point. He scuffled a little bit early on. We talked about this on the future games recap. We had an umpire that had a very, very tight zone for us, and he kind of had to battle his way through it and figure out which of his pitches were going to work and allow him to be successful. I think the biggest thing for me with Andrew is just consistency. Like I saw him at the tryout and he was upper 80's, just barely missing 90. And he also went through the position player workout that day. He's a pretty good right-handed hitting corner infield. Futures on the mound for him, but there's that athleticism there. And then he was very good at the future games. He was, scuffle first inning, very strong in the second. Then I got a chance to see him on the opening weekend of Scout League out here. He goes 3 innings for the Braves team. First inning was kind of similar to his future games outing where he scuffled a little bit early and then he settled quickly and got very dominant very quickly. I think he got ambushed for a homer off the first hitter. Next guy got a hit and there was a walk. And then after that, I don't remember a base runner for the next 2 innings plus of work for him. So it's just he continues to be consistent, and I think there's another jump for him whenever he decides that it's time to give up the bat or somebody takes the bat away from him. It's going to be a velocity jump, and we're looking at a guy that could be a mid-90s arm down the road with a very big, durable frame. Kick it back to you, Les. Probably one of the most impactful risers in this class who really, really, really opened eyes throughout this summer with Elijah Mason.
Yeah, Mason made a huge jump from 39 to 5 in the rankings, and it all started at the Future Games tryout. We talked about him during that podcast, but, he was electric for Vinny and I there out at Mater Dei, that tryout, and then obviously getting the invite to the Future Games where he, did nothing but put on a show. And, I love the story that you relayed where, he ended up getting a double and then made it over to third base in the game and was disappointed in himself from missing a pitch there. It just kind of shows the mentality that, that he's going to do everything possible to come out and be the winner of every pitch. And, very good runner, 6'6" runner. The arm, it really works on the left side, but the athleticism, man, it's just a long, lean, wiry frame that I think is going to continue to develop and add strength. And he's a guy that could play third base. He could play shortstop. He could probably play center field. Where he, ultimately may end up because of his athleticism. But it's a guy that absolutely changed the game for us in the middle of our lineup out in Georgia, given his left-handed hitting ability. And, I just remember, I think about the tryout where he went double, triple. And it was just like, holy smokes, this guy was a late ad for that tryout and is probably the best player we have here. So Elijah Mason with a well-deserved 34-point jump from 39 to 5 in our current rankings for the class of 2027, who is another guy that, again, is got a multitude of visits coming up. And, it's going to be a pick where you want to go type situation for him. So, I know we're all big fans of Elijah Mason on this podcast. So, Vinny, I'll go over to you, and a guy that, I'm a huge fan of, Hardy. We saw him at the OC Summer ID, and we're kind of like, man, who is this guy? How much did he play for St. John Bosco in the spring? He's on the smaller side, but, a lot like Navarro, you said earlier, Vinny, plays a lot bigger than his size. we invite him out to the state games, hoping that he would come. He shows up, and he just put on an absolute show from the minute he walked on the field during the workout to his last at bat in that event, Vinny.
Yeah. So Drew Hurd, you talked about how he performed at state games. He was one of the guys I was thinking about maybe for MVP at state games with how he performed. Had multiple extra base hits, homered twice. I think he had a little bit of favor, at Fullerton Union with the short fence, but had a triple there. He showed off the wheels also. It's a little unorthodox swing, just the way that he, has his hands positioned, but obviously he's made it work for himself as a timing rhythm for him. The speed is off the charts for me because I got to see him last week at the SoCal Scout League at University of San Diego, and he was playing center field, and there was a line drive to left center, and he caught it just about the warning track, and he seemed like it was an effortless run for him, kind of glided to the ball and made it look really easy. So he can really track down balls in the outfield. Uh, it's fun to watch him run the bases, had a stand-up triple, like I said, at state games. And I think he's a kid that, he made a jump, 43 spots in our rankings. And I think he's just kind of, coming onto the radar, and people are going to, really start to learn what he's all about. And he's a really exciting player to watch. And, I think he's, trajectory, trending in the right direction at St. John Bosco.
Yeah, he's obviously on a very, very good and loaded team there at Bosco. And hopefully he gets more of an opportunity this year to kind of, prove his worth, because he's a really talented player, man. And again, that summer ID kind of opened our eyes to just how good he really is. And Hank, a guy that you obviously saw during the spring, and we got on the team NorCal for the future games, and Bryce Ferris, I mean, we talked about him on the podcast for the future games recap, and it was like, okay, this guy's pretty good. He can swing it. He can defend, in the middle of the infield. Then he hops on the mound. And I remember coaching third base. I look at you. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you waiting till the last day to throw this?
I was like, I didn't know this was going to happen. Like, come on. No, but Ferris, he's shocked a lot of us this summer. I mean, the kid's got a lot of tools. He could run, he could hit, he could throw, all that stuff. It was just a question of where the hell is this kid going to end up on the field, right? And because he worked down the infield, done the outfield, hopped on the mound as well in the tryout. And he ended up not even doing the infield workout in Georgia, just stuck to the outfield workout. And I think when it's all said and done, he's probably going to end up on the mound, just because that arm it's a very fast working arm. And I think if you touch that up a little bit, then, like I said, he's only a junior still. So he actually just committed to the Air Force. So props to Mr. Ferris for that. I think it's a big step for him. And I think he's, showing that maturity this summer a little bit. And I know Hardy, another guy that just committed that you're high on, is Ben Lewis.
Yeah, Ben's a fun one. I had a chance to see Ben at an MLK event in start of 2024, and he was a super skinny 5'10" right-hander at San Diego, and he was like 80 to 82 that day, but the arm really worked. He threw a ton of strikes. I shot video on him, posted the video. I got some crap like we always do on social media from people of like, oh, why are you posting the kid throwing 80, 82? And it's like, guys, we've done this for a very long time. He's a freshman throwing 80, 82, and he's going to get bigger. He's going to get stronger, and he's going to get better. And guess what? He did just that. He makes the area code team for the Brewers, the underclass. Got to see him throw out there. He's up to 92 now. He lives in the upper 80s. He throws everything for a strike. It's a starter profile. And it's like, okay, this is what I envisioned when I saw him 2 years ago as a freshman. I don't know if I envisioned him getting in there that fast, but he has. And like Hank said, he picked up a commitment to Oklahoma State today as we're recording this here and we're doing this podcast this morning. I see that he's picked up an OK State commit, and I'm like, that's awesome. That kid's got a chance to be very, very special on the mound. Plays at a good program in the Inland Empire. He is done everything that I thought he was going to do, maybe a little faster than even I predicted, but very high on Ben. And he's another one who knows, in 2 years, we may look up and he never makes Oklahoma State. Maybe he goes straight into pro balls. We've talked about this whole class. So we're going to kick it over to Les, another Inland Empire guy. And this is a guy that Les has been super high on. He has been promoting. He's been advocating for. I've had a chance to see him once, and I see exactly what Les is talking about in Roy Kim, the Stanford commit out of the Inland Empire.
Yeah, Kim was at our Junior Future Games tryout 2 years ago, and because he was a PO, and given the nature of that tournament, we had chose to not take him to the Junior Future Games. And I look back on that and I kind of kick myself in the backside as a result, because all he's done is continue to get better. He's now upper 80s with the fastball. The breaking ball is one of the best in the class, in my opinion. The changeup continues to develop. Picked up a Stanford commit this summer, and Kim is just one of those pitchers on the rise. Kind of your prototypical left-handed pitcher. All reports are that where he's really grown is in his leadership and his maturity. Seems to be a theme in this podcast, but his maturity and his leadership have really grown within that Great Oak program. And he's a guy that's thrown a lot of innings. As a freshman, as a closer for them, he threw a lot of innings last year, again, kind of on the back end of the rotation. Probably will move into a starting role this year. And again, left-handed pitchers that know how to pitch, that have multiple pitches, those guys carry a high value. Obviously a high academic kid with the Stanford commit, but Roy Kim's a guy that just continues to get better and better physically. He has developed his body to where now it's like, okay, you go from being this kind of softer 8th grader, 9th grader to now there's some physical maturity there. There's some strength on the frame. He still has a room for a little bit more there, but the arm action, man, it's really clean. It's really good. He repeats it, but the increase in the velocity and his understanding of what his stuff does and how he can do it, I think is what's really taken him to the next level so far. Here for Great Oak. And I think that's what led to that Stanford commitment. And, Vinnie, a guy that, we're all kind of familiar with down here. Hank, I don't know if Hank's seen him much other than on video, but Sean Bryan, the catcher there, makes a jump from 109 to 92, comes from a really strong program where the coach really advocates for his players. And so tell us a little bit about Sean Bryan.
Yeah. Sean was another guy at our state games that, I took a liking to. And I think we talked about it last week on the, 2026 podcast. There's some guys that, are showcase players. Some guys, really stand out in game. And I think he's a guy that stands out in game for me. And it really is on the defensive side of the ball, behind the plate as a catcher. The arm talent has good accuracy to second base. He was 77 miles an hour, out of the hand, but it's accurate to the bag. It's a quick release. He's athletic behind the plate. But the big thing that stood out for me was the leadership that he showed. And like you said, it's a theme kind of in this podcast. He stood out. And I think it's, something that goes under the radar for a catcher is, a leadership trait and how you can handle a pitching staff. And I thought he did that the best, at least on our field at Fullerton Junior College. And that's something that, I think scouts look at, but it's not necessarily something that maybe gets written to a report all too often. And I definitely want to just highlight, how Sean stood out to me, as a catcher myself. That's something that I really look for when I, see a catcher in live game. The bat is it's a respectful bat. Obviously, he had a couple hits in our state games, but I just really like the mentality, like I did with Sebastian Navarro, just behind the plate, how he carries himself in game. And like you said, he comes from a good program, and I think he's got a good head on his shoulders that's going to, continue to improve over the next 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, that I think coming from the good program, like we're starting to see this, right? Most of these guys we're talking about here come from these really good programs. And Hank, one of our favorite guys here that we had at the state games, and a guy I know he's one of your favorites, and goes from unranked to 178, and that's Big Poogs, Tristan Puga.
Poogs. That's my guy, Poogs. No, I mean, like you were just bringing up good programs, and like talking about Poogs is we found this guy at an ID, and we didn't know where he was from. We were like, where's Lemoore at? And he's like, oh, it's about Fresno. I was like, wow, man. And he goes, yeah, we just love baseball out there. And so we get him to state games, and this kid put on a show hitting. And I think Vinny just said, like, you know, he's the kid with the personality. All the kids gravitate towards him, but he knows when to get serious. Like, he locks in at the plate. He's actually a really good catcher. I just think he needed that little bit of exposure to get him going. And I wouldn't be like, he breaks, and he's going to be one of those kids. He kind of reminds me of that Salvador Perez type thing where, you know, he's pretty good behind the dish, but, you know, the bat, you can put him anywhere in the lineup and he's going to hit. So I'm a big fan of Poogs. He's deep in the valley, almost to Bakersfield, but I think someone's going to find a good spot for this kid, and he's only going to continue to get better. And, you know, he's super respectful, super nice kid. But yeah, I got nothing but love for Poogs.
Had that big triple there over at FJC where, I mean, he was rumbling and stumbling a little bit around the bases, but I mean, his celebration was epic once he got to the bag there. It was fun to see because, like you said, you know, all these players gravitate towards him because of his personality. And, man, I mean, that whole dugout was just fired up for him when he got to third base. So, Hardy, last guy for you. You know, makes a small jump from 131 to 118, but a jump nonetheless. And, you know, and that's Patrick Foster.
Yeah, Patrick's a kid similar to Ben Lewis. I saw him as a very skinny 5'8", 120-pound freshman starting on the varsity level at San Marcos up in Santa Barbara. And it was like, I really like this kid's swing. I love his instincts. He was playing right field that year. They had a center fielder who was a senior. And you could kind of see all the baseball ability. He just was really skinny and really young, but he was holding his own and competing against varsity kids. He comes back as a sophomore. He's put on about 25 pounds. He's up to that 145, 150 range. You know, the strength gets a little better. Now he's playing center. He hits over 400. He's a top of the order guy. He's running better. Then he comes out, and we've talked about this with events, comes out to the Central California Summer ID, and you start seeing how quick the hips really turn, how fast the hands really are, how impactful the bat is. He runs a couple balls out at Ventura College to right field, and he's just hammering baseballs, and he's throwing well. Then he comes to state games, and he's really good at state games. I think he had 3 hits over 3 games. He drew 2 walks, played really good. Like, he just had the ability to show that his athletic ability matches his baseball ability, and he's only going to keep getting better because he's going to keep getting stronger. He's a very dedicated kid. I had a chance to sit with the family and him about 3 weeks ago and talk with them about some recruiting stuff. We spent about 2 hours together and just kind of walked him through some things. Kid's at high academics, super motivated, and I don't think this is going to be the last jump we see out of Patrick Foster. I would not be surprised if, as he continues to get better, we see him push his way into the top 100 one day. We'll kick it over to you, Les. Left-handed hitters who rake are one of my favorite things in baseball, and I'm going to butcher your last name, Tyler, so I'm not even going to say it, but this is an Oregon commit out of Orange County who is a left-handed hitting outfielder who rakes, going back to when I saw him at preseason All-State back in Temescal Canyon in 2024.
Yeah, Tyler Vladeck out of Cypress High School. You know, this is a guy that's played a lot of baseball at Cypress, one of the better programs here in Orange County, and, you know, gets coached up and he gets coached hard by Coach Weber over there. But, you know, this is a guy that we saw, like you said, at the preseason All-State and really left an impression on us. You know, this was last year in 2024, left an impression on us just with the way he handled the quality pitching that we had at that event. But then he goes out and, you know, he's an all-league performer last year for Cypress. You know, is playing for CBA during the summer, has a really big summer, leads to an Oregon commit this summer. You know, it's just whippy hands, gets the barrel through the zone, keeps it on plane. He's got sneaky pop to the pull side, right? But he's able to use all fields with the bat, and he's a good runner, right? He's really improved that element of his game where, you know, when we saw him, he was a little slower that cold, frigid morning at Elsinore High School. But, you know, he's really improved his athleticism in that regard. And, you know, the arm strength in the outfield really plays. He got some innings on the mound, but I think that's more because he's a really good athlete that can maybe pitch a little bit. in an emergency situation. But Tyler Vladeck is one of those guys, I think, in Orange County that kind of falls under the radar because, maybe because he doesn't play in the Trinity League, though Cypress plays a kind of a Trinity League non-conference schedule. They're not ducking anybody, but the results have been there going back to his sophomore year. And this is a guy, again, who just continues to get better and better and grow and physically mature. And I think going to Oregon, if that's where he ends up going, is going to be like the perfect spot, right? Because he's a kind of a prototypical Waz type guy, can, lay a bunt down, can run, he plays really strong defense. He can hit the ball in the gaps, like just a really smart and intellectual type baseball player. And I think that's kind of what Waz looks for up at Oregon.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I agree. There's also one more guy I want to just talk about for a quick sec. It kind of reminds me of that is Mason Park from Fullerton.
Yeah. Good call. Good call.
It was brief, but I hadn't seen him besides state games, and just from watching him take ground balls, hit BP, and just do some gameplay, I was like, who is this kid? Like, he does everything right, plays hard, bat jumps off the ball. He's got a pretty good arm, and like he could play short. And so I don't know. I just, from seeing him, he's a guy that really stuck out for me, especially at state games. But I think the kid's got a shot to be really good.
Yeah, I mean, he was the league conference or the league player of the year as a sophomore last year. So, well, now that Hank is taking one more guy, I'm going to go one more guy too.
I was going to do the same thing too.
I encourage you guys to do the same thing here. So, for me, a guy that we've known for a while now, Drew Rico, the catcher out at Harvard Westlake. Obviously he split time at catcher a little bit there towards the end of the year for Harvard Westlake. Or early in the year, for Harvard Westlake last year after starting as a freshman and, handling Marston and Rayner as a freshman. But I saw him in our summer tournament down at Great Park. And, man, this guy is just physical now. I mean, he is beyond being that kind of young 15-year-old kid. He looks like a grown man behind the dish. And, he was 2 for 3 in one of the games. He was 1 for 2 in another one of the games, included a walk, and then 2 for 3 in a different game that I saw of theirs. And I mean, it's a polished defensive profile where now the bat's starting to catch up to that polish behind the plate. And, it's just really impressive, the gains that he's made offensively in a short period of time. And, he's going to have a chance now to kind of be a leader on that Harvard Westlake team, along with some other guys in that same class, Rudy, our boy Jake Kim, so it's just a number of different guys that are going to be stepping into that leadership role now as juniors for Harvard Westlake. And Drew Rico, unquestionably is one of the better, if not, top 3 or 4 catchers in this class, maybe 5 or 6 catchers in this class, but with the gains that he's made offensively.
Yeah, that's a good one there. I went up the Central Coast last time to Santa Barbara. I'm going to go a little farther up the Central Coast into Arroyo Grande. Talk about Ruben Servin. He's a left-handed hitting, left side of the infield guy with a 6'4". I think he's about 170 pounds right now. He's going to fill out. He's got broad shoulders. He's got high hips. But this was a kid that I kind of tracked all spring on social media, watching his video. Never had a chance to get all the way up the coast to see him play, but pushed him to come down to state games so I could see him in person and we could all see him. And Ruben really impressed me. Like, we talk about guys don't post bad video. So you're always going to look good on video. But getting to see him in person, I really love the swing. There's some smoothness. There's some twitch there. He's got a little bit of strength. He moves well at shortstop. He might eventually outgrow it and need to move to third, but the arm will play there. The glove will play there. It's this really good baseball player, and I know a associate scout. He's playing with the Dodgers scout team, but the associate scout for the Padres, who's up in that area, who I've gotten to know really well, he's seen him a ton. We've talked about him quite a bit. He really likes him. He's working with him this fall on some stuff. And this is a name that's probably a little farther off the radar for some college programs, But if I'm a mid-major D1, low-major D1, I'm getting Ruben Servant on my board and I'm tracking him because he's got a chance to turn into a really good player as that frame fills out and he taps into his natural tools.
Vinny, did you find another one?
No, another one I want to talk about. I want to talk about him earlier too, but I had 3 other guys. Is Griffin Feen of Chaparral High School. I saw him a good amount in the spring. First, I was looking up numbers, in the Temecula area, and he was just off the charts. And I wanted to go see them play against Temecula Valley, another good program. First at bat, he goes opposite field homer, batting leadoff for them. And I was happy Hardy was able to see him at the area code tryout, and then he was a late ad for us at our state games where we could all see him. And I thought it's just a consistent, each of the 4 times I've seen him, it's a 6'8", 460. He can play center field and second base. You can put him at third as well. But he just hits. He hit 370 this year as a team MVP at Chaparral. And, I think he's a guy kind of like 𝕼𝕚𝕚𝕕 that I talked about in 26. It's just each time I see him, it's just very consistent. And I think that is going to, really help him long term. And he's going to continue to get better for sure.
All right, Hank, you started a bad trend because I got one more. I got about
Does it mean we all get one more?
Man. I mean, we could go on for
well, in that case,
I got one more too.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I'll
might
ante
have
up
two,
that
guys.
one.
I might have 2 guys, and this is a guy, Andrew Carlson. I had not seen him, and I saw him at the underclass area code games, and I remember texting in our group text, and I'm like, Hardy, who the heck is this guy, right? I mean, Trinity Classical Academy, obviously a younger brother of another really good player. And I mean, this guy was on the mound at the underclass area code games, just pumping strikes with 3 pitches, low 90s. I think he touched a 92 or 93 at the area code games. And it's a long, lean, kind of wiry frame. And, I remember texting you guys like, who has seen this guy, because this guy is really freaking good. And it's an easy delivery that he repeats the mechanics on. I mean, it's pretty athletic mover down the mound. And I mean, he was pretty dominant in his outing that I saw at the area code underclass games. And I was just really impressed with him. Obviously a smaller school. Hardy, you can shed some light on the geographical location of the school.
Yeah.
But, it was really impressive, man. This guy's got the goods, and obviously making the underclass area code team puts him on the map. But I had not had the opportunity to see him. But Andrew Carlson to me is one of those standouts from the summer.
Yeah, Andrew and his older brother John, they hit me up on social all the time. Come out and see us play. And I kind of, not trying to be mean, I'm like, guys, you play in a league where I'm not going to learn anything by watching you punch out a bunch of kids that are probably freshman level at some of the bigger schools. But I was like, I guarantee you we're going to see you guys in the summer. And that's what I told Andrew. I'm like, if you can make it to the future games tryout, like, you're going to have a legit chance to make this team. But it just didn't work out in his schedule. He made the area code games team, and it was like, okay, I know one of us is going to get there the day that he throws. So I was glad we got a chance to see it. Because Les, as soon as you sent that text, he's like, he's really good. I'm like, I know he's really good. It's just like, I couldn't make an hour drive to watch you face a 5'4", 105-pound kid.
That's fair.
But it was like, I knew he was going to dominate because the stuff is real. Older brother John's going to Cal Baptist. He's going to get really good out there on top of being already really good. But yeah, he's going to be a guy that's going to pick up some commitments or pick up a commitment to a pretty good school in his own right.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Who's going next?
I got a kid for us. He's actually, I took him to Georgia, but I think he's a perfect example of a kid who, does showcases and stuff. And the numbers aren't going to like pop off the table, but you put him in a game, it's lights out. And that's Merrick Lee from Menlo Atherton. And I noticed that when, I was like, hey, Merrick, I'm going to hit you leadoff out there. Okay, you're going to face 94, 96, first, hitter of the game. Like, let's see what you could do. And this dude, I think he works like a 7-8 pitch walk. Yeah. He's spoiling pitches. He's spitting on stuff. And I'm like, dude, that's a leadoff guy. And, from a defensive workout, like his jumps, like there's not many true outfielder, like defenders, but I think Merrick's up there in this class. And, with 2 more years, he's got a chance to be, get the arm strength up, and he's already fast. But like I said, if he gets into that 6'6", 6'7" range, hey, now we're talking, and he's a switch hitter. So I think that's the other part where, he's got a secret weapon in his back pocket. But yeah, he's a kid where he's not going to light it up on a spreadsheet, but dude, you can't really teach the heart is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
I love those guys that, Hank, I'm glad you brought that up, right? Those guys that you just you have to watch, right? To really appreciate their talents. You're not going to go see them at a showcase and be like, oh my gosh, I got to have that guy. But the guys that really evaluate, right? That go out and they watch guys and they see this guy, you see Merrick play in 2-3 games, you're all in, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's versus, okay, yeah, he was really good in this one game, we got to offer him. But those guys that are patient and really evaluate and go out and spend the time to watch these guys play, I love those players. Those are my favorite guys. Give me a reason to come back and watch you play, right?
Yeah. I got a kid like that. When we talk about events, and I think Hank has hit on this really well with that Central Valley, Bakersfield area. We're diving into that area and trying to really understand it better. And ℙ𝕠𝕕𝕚𝕕𝕗 out of Liberty in Bakersfield. He's the youngest brother of 3. I believe the middle brother is at Cal State Bakersfield. The older brother I know played college. Forgive me, I do not remember what school he played at, but I know the older brother also played some college baseball. Cash came out to our Bakersfield Summer ID after getting some playing time on varsity as a sophomore at Liberty. Limited success, but it was quickly easy to notice that he's got some tools. It's a good runner. I think he was 6'9", 7'1" range. Threw really well from the outfield. It was an accurate upper 80s arm with carry. He moves. He does things easily out there. Goes up to the plate. It's a quick left-handed swing. He's got some juice. He hit a ball during BP, and I was parked back behind the right field fence, beyond the cage, beyond a storage shed. He hit it, and my first thought as my windshield was going to be broken, that he was going to clear all of that and hit my truck. And thankfully, he cleared my truck as well. He didn't hit it. But, and then for good measure, it's 108 degrees. He's gone through an entire position player workout. He jumps on the bump towards the end of our bullpen session, and he's mid to upper 80s. It's a really quick arm. There's some tempo and some effort to the delivery, but it's nothing out of control. It's just a really well-rounded athlete who I think is only going to continue to get better as he plays against higher-level baseball. And obviously, being the youngest brother, he's seen it for a while. That's ℙ𝕠𝕕𝕚𝕗 out of Bakersfield.
Yeah, older brother Cooper Gorecki was with us at the 2020 Future Games, the COVID year, when it was a little later in the year, and he had a really good performance out there. So, it's in that family. Vinny, you got another?
No, but I just wanted to kind of dive in a little more to, guys that you just need to go out and see, because I think this state is just so big and there's so many good players, in the sense that, it might take 2 or 3 looks for you to really lock in on a guy. And those are my favorite players to watch, at least in the spring. A couple guys that, I never saw them in a showcase setting, but if I saw their high school 3 times, there's a kid at Carlsbad I guess we can't talk about, is Liam Steigers. He kind of just popped in my head when you said that. I saw him, I think, Carlsbad 3 times this year, and I think he had hits in all 3 games. He's a smart player, sophomore, for them. He was at our Future Games tryout at Modern Day, but, batting up at the top of the order, just gets on base, and it's the tools aren't super loud, but there's players like that. It's this kid just he fits in at the high school level on a team, and you can tell that he can fit into any level or at any culture of a college team. Every program can use one of those guys that they may not blow you away in a workout setting, but in game, multiple looks, you fall in love with these types of players. And I just know that there's a ton in California. And, a lot of those kids, I think, deserve some love too.
Yeah, I remember seeing Steigers and Carlsbad in their spring break tournament 2 days in a row. And I was like, ooh, this kid can play, right? Top of the order line, top of the lineup hitter, right? Gets the ball in play, uses, the not so loud tools, but they play up, right? It's like a
Yeah.
lot of the guys you've talked about today. And I'm sorry, guys, I got to do it, but I got one more guy. And it's because it's one of those head scratchers, right? It's like a guy that pitched on the lower levels, who came out to the Central Cal Summer ID, ℙ𝕠𝕕𝕕𝕕, was really, really good at that ID. And I remember looking at you, Hardy, as we're standing behind the mound. He's throwing his pen. We're like, dude, holy smokes, like, where did this guy come from? But it was upper 80s. It's a slider for strikes. It was a changeup for strikes. We've seen some videos since then where it's now touching 90 pretty regularly, kind of getting to that 91. It's a long, lean frame, 6'2" or so.
Yeah.
About $165, $175. And I remember texting this high school coach, like, dude, what's the story here? He's like, man, I just didn't have innings for him, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, it plays at ECR where they end up winning the city section, the open division city section. That was a really talented team, but I would anticipate ℙ𝕠𝕕𝕕 is going to get a lot of run and a lot of play this year for ECR. Just on the frame alone and his ability to land 3 pitches for strikes, that's a guy that needs to be on college coaches' radars, because the frame's only going to get bigger and stronger, but it's his ability to pitch and throw strikes with 3 pitches that was arguably, to me, the most impressive thing at that summer ID. And Hardy, I mean, you could back me up on that, because I know you feel the same way.
Yeah, I think we were standing back. We had started the camera, and he threw his first 2 pitches, and Vinny was back near the track man, and I was kind of guessing like 5 or 6, and so I hold up the 6 finger, and all of a sudden I look at Vinny, and he goes, "No, 8." And we looked at each other, and I had to stop him. And I'm like, "Hey, Hudson, like, were you hurt? Why, how come you weren't on varsity?" And you see that exactly. He's like, "There just weren't innings." He's like, "We had seniors that were, gonna get the run." And our coach looked at me and said, "This is not a product of you not being good enough. It's, I need you to pitch. I don't need you to sit on the varsity team and throw 12 innings this year. I need you to go down on JV and throw 50 innings so that you are the next Lukach who's going to Long Beach State out of ECR. Like, I want you to be Lukach in 2 years, not just sitting and coming along for the ride on the varsity level."
Yeah.
So that was a great pick, because if you had let us go one more each, that's actually who I had in mind. So I'm glad, because he's got a chance to be a pretty good arm for somebody down the road.
That will go. If you got one more, I know I can see Hank doing his homework. Go. Hank,
I have a guy, but I want to stress the importance of just getting seen in front of our staff, and I'm going to relate it to a kid, 𝕼𝕚𝕚𝕕𝕚, and he's a kid that nobody knew about. This kid, he's 4 hours south of me, he's 5 hours north of you guys, and we ended up getting him to a small ID up in Lincoln, California. So he drove at like 4 a.m, came up, and he's actually a 2. He's a really good shortstop, right? And hops on the mound. I'm like, dude, we got to get you to Georgia. So invite him to the tryout, comes to the tryout, kills it. And we're like, okay, you got a spot. And, him in the back of his head, he still thinks he's a shortstop too. But he knew how valuable those 2 innings in Georgia was. And so now it's to a point where he goes from a kid that no one knew about to where I'm not going to say schools, but I know he's taking a couple visits soon, and they're very, very prestigious colleges. So, I mean, his kind of life changed within a matter of 6-7 months, because he did just go to a small little ID event. But that goes to show the importance of just getting in front of our staff. And, that's the ability of all these events we run. And so, Wyatt's a kid now where he's a national guy, shooters on him. And, I'm excited to see him grow in the next 2 years.
Dude, his outing in Georgia was electric.
Impressive.
And I remember being in the dugout with you, Hank, and I'm like, bro, where'd you find this guy? Right? Like,
I remember that. You're like, who is this kid?
Where did you find this guy? And, you told me that story about him coming to that ID, and, and it wasn't like he drove 20 minutes to go to this ID, right? I mean, that's a little bit of a trek for him from Redwood to Lincoln, right? To get
about
to
4.5 hours.
Yeah, just to get to an ID event. But you're right. Like it absolutely changed the trajectory of his career, because he got to go to Georgia. and he was absolutely lights out there, right? And it was just like, I remember coaches coming over to our dugout like, hey, guys, who is this guy? Like, tell me more about this guy. Like, who is this guy, right? And it's like, I mean, that's what it's all about, right? So I'm glad you brought that up, Hank, because, getting in front of us, whether it's, us coming to your games in the spring or coming to an ID or coming to our state games or coming to whatever these invite only events, these other ones that we do in the fall. I mean, it's so important, right? And I think we touched on this on the last podcast, right? It's not coming to every event that we run.
Yeah.
No, I'll tell you right now, we don't want you to do that, right? I mean, there's some players that choose to do that, but we don't want you to do that. Like, you come to an ID, if you've never been to an event, come to an ID, and if you're good, you're going to get an invitation to one of our invite only events. And that's really where it gets blown up for you, right? Because an ID is just that. It's let's identify some players that we're not familiar with or who we don't know a whole lot about, versus these invite only events are guys that we know, guys that we've seen. We typically play a game. And then now it's okay. Now we can really, really get down to the nitty gritty of who you are as a player.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think when you talk about like ID guys, is just to bring up one more kid, Carson Kinnick, the catcher out of Upland, who just blew up this summer. I had to go back and I'm like, I know this name. And as he kept climbing up and making noise in the summer, I'm like, why does this name sound so familiar? Well, he'd come to our Inland Empire preseason ID and had showed pretty well. Didn't have the best spring at Upland. Like, it wasn't terrible. I think he had 250, hit a couple doubles, homered, played well. I happened to miss him. He wasn't in the lineup the day that I saw Upland at the Baseline League Day. But he goes out this summer and just absolutely crushes it. He makes the area code team. And Les, you said this earlier, like the depth of catching in this class in 27 is so good. And Carson's put himself right in the mix to be at the top of that group. And the ability to go back, and I just did an uncommitted spotlight on him and look at the video that he had from January at that event. And you're like, oh, okay, all of those tools were present there. He's now understanding how to get to those tools in game. And that just really helps us better understand this class and this state when we have a chance to get eyes on you like that.
Yeah, that absolutely. I know you're really high on Kinnick and for good reason. For good reason. All right. We've kind of gone overboard here with adding some few guys. Do we have anybody else that we want to discuss here before we wrap things up?
And shout out Jake Kim. Keep hitting baseballs hard.
Jake Kim hits baseballs hard.
Jake Kim, that's our boy. We gave Jake Kim a lot of love on that Future Games podcast. We still love you, Jake. We can't wait to see you again. But all right, gentlemen. Well, again, appreciate the time for hopping on. We appreciate you folks for watching and listening. Make sure to check out prepbaseballreport.com for all your news, ranking, and event information. Until next time.